because here's the thing. This is what I was trying to do is I was trying to fix it. I was in fix it mode. So I was like, maybe I can take CBD. Maybe I can do supplements. Maybe I can try magnesium. Maybe I can do meditation, exercise. Maybe I can do tapping. Maybe I can, all those different things, cold showers, breathing exercises. I wanted to do all of those because I just wanted those feelings to go away. But yes, those are good for a healthy person, but it's not good if you're trying to eliminate anxiety because it doesn't, it might help in the short term, but it doesn't help in the long term. And you talked about that in the mentorship. And I've told people that 100 times when I was helping you in the mentorship after I recovered.
What's up? Welcome to the channel. This channel is about helping you overcome your anxiety symptoms, panic attacks, derealization, depersonalization, all those things so that you can go back to living fully and freely without relying on coping crutches. And in this video, I have a very special guest. I have Greg. Greg fell into the anxiety cycle. And what's interesting about Greg is a few things. Number one, Greg didn't go through the mentorship, but he actually has a unique perspective where he was a mentor in the mentorship. He was coaching people through the recovery journey. And so I asked Greg if he can come on the channel and really share his recovery story and really share with you what really helped. Now, if you really want to know more recovery stories, which I highly encourage to help you understand that not only is recovery possible, but if you focus on the right steps, it's inevitable. I have a playlist that you can definitely check out up here that'll really break down how other people are recovering. Many of these members are members in the mentorship. And with that said, definitely pay attention to Greg. He has a lot of great insight and I hope you enjoy. So without further ado, let's get it started. What's up, everybody? I have one of the coolest people. I know I say that all the time. Greg is super awesome. He's very involved in the mentorship, and I really wanted him to come on the channel and share his story. And Greg, I know, I personally know Greg from, his own coaching and stuff like that, like helping out in the mentorship. And so I'm really excited you're here. Greg, thanks so much for joining, man.
Yeah, no problem for having me. I appreciate it. It's been one of the long time things coming. You always want to, like, someone in the mentorship or anybody like that's been involved, you kind of want to get to a point where you can actually do something like this.
Yeah.
And I know we've had conversations about me coming onto the channel, and at first I was a little bit reserved, but now yeah. I'm like, obviously a different change of tune. So I'm happy to kind of share my story with you and everyone else.
No, I know everybody here, including myself, is very appreciative. I always thought, I was very vulnerable sharing my story. And so it was something I never imagined doing. And like, I always, I have respect for people that, are able to share and admiration for that, because it's not easy sharing that stuff. So Greg, before we get started, let's start with what were like your most intense symptoms? Like what was the most debilitating anxiety experiences?
Yeah. So, and that's a great question. Cause I've been thinking about that like a lot lately, at least in the past like week or so that we've been kind of talking to get on the channels. Like before, like I would say I fell into the anxiety cycle. I didn't know what anxiety was because I never really experienced it like in a debilitating form, right? I didn't know, what a panic attack was. I didn't know I never knew what cortisol was or like your amygdala. And so when all these things like started happening to me, I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, why do I feel like this? And your symptoms change. So the one that's more debilitating is the one that you're thinking about at that day or at that time. So, and I had all of them, right? At the very beginning, it was like, I would say the intrusive thoughts is like when I first fell into the cycle, I was like, you didn't know what was going on. So your brain's like thinking like trying to protect you and save you. And I was having all these crazy intrusive thoughts. And I was like, why the hell am I thinking about this stuff? And eventually, those kind of morphed. But while I was having those intrusive thoughts types of things, like I was also getting these like massive like adrenaline waves. And I was like, I didn't know if that was a panic attack. So obviously you go to Google and you're like, what the hell's going on with me? What's wrong with me? And then it tells you the most terrible things. And then your intrusive thoughts get even worse, right? But I would say like my form of panic attack was like these huge adrenaline waves. I'd get like this, it almost like felt like a tsunami coming over you. And then I'd start like sweating like really bad and heart palpitations. And then I couldn't catch my breath. And I'm like, oh, is that a panic attack? Is that not a panic attack? I don't know. Cause I think it's different for everybody. Some people hyperventilate. That never happened to me. Mine was more like like sweats, like really bad sweats for no reason at all. And they would happen out of the blue. Like I wouldn't even be thinking about anything. And all of a sudden, like, whoop, there goes, there's your adrenaline. It's going crazy. There's a tiger behind you. There must be because, you're obviously something's wrong. But I would say like, the adrenaline rushes, the heart palpitations, intrusive thoughts. And there's all the minimum ones too. Like, DPDR was eventually as those things like went kind of lower, the derealization and depersonalization like kicked into high. And I was like, felt I never got to the point where I was like, am I real? Is this real? It was more like it was almost I was always in this like dream state where everything seemed like the colors were just different. And it was like I'd walk outside and it was like it just like vision changes. And I was like, it took me a long, long time to realize that that's like nothing was actually wrong with me. And in that it's okay. But everyone goes through that part of like you're trying to figure it out for a long time. And then once you kind of do figure it out is really when I think things kind of take a change for most people that truly want to recover from this and not just, be a victim of it for the rest of their lives, which I did not want to.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I totally agree. So what was that change for you that made you realize that, this was
So I wasn't a part of your mentorship, but when you first kind of like something like this happens to most of these people and being part of the mentorship, you see everyone's journey and it's usually all the same. So you kind of like, so for me, it was like this happened about 2 years ago, the end of the year 2020, right around in November. And I remember like I was on vacation with my family and like, and I don't know what the trigger was because as I look back now, I realized there was a lot of things that led up to that. And if I look back now, I'm like, oh, that's like a little bit of anxiety. And I didn't know what it was at the time. I just thought it was like, you know, stress, right? So come into like, you start Googling your symptoms, like, what is wrong with me? And right after that vacation, we got back home. And I remember I couldn't even drive. I couldn't drive back from vacation. I made my wife drive. And we got back to my house and I was like, I got to go to the emergency room. And she was like, really? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, something's not right. I just got to know what the hell's wrong with me. Not knowing it was just anxiety, right? So I go to the doctor. I get checked out at the emergency room. This is at the height of COVID. So I'm sitting in an emergency room with people full of masks and sick people. And I didn't even care. I didn't even care that there was people around me that, that had probably real illnesses. I'm just there like having palpitations and thinking like the worst case scenario. So it wasn't until after that, like everything checked out fine at the hospital, obviously, because 99% of the time it does for everybody. And I followed up with my primary care physician like a couple of days later. And then it was really just after that, it was checking in on myself all the time. Do I still have symptoms? What's this? Is it a panic attack? And and then you start Googling and then you find all these different people online talking about what they can do to fix you. And it was, your doctors want to help you, obviously, but they're there to fix your symptoms. And to fix your symptoms, it's usually either medication or therapy, right? And I tried both of them. And I think I tried, I don't know, I want to go 7 different medications over the course of like a month. And every time I tried it, I was like, it didn't work immediately. So I was like, nope, this isn't it. Really, realistically, it was probably my subconscious. I didn't want to do medication because I always saw that stigma. I was like, oh, if you're on medicine, then, then you're weak. Right. And it's just maybe a mentality for a lot of men because they don't seek out help. They don't want to feel vulnerable. And they feel shame in having to ask for help. So I went to therapy. I think I met like 3 times with like a social worker / therapist. And, she was telling me like, oh, well, maybe you're allergic to chocolate. Maybe you're eating too many sweets. Maybe you're drinking too many beers or like, so I tried all these different things and like, none of it worked. None of it worked because I wasn't addressing the root problem. And like, as I come to find out, it's like, you're not trying to fix your symptoms. You're trying to fix the anxiety, right? So it took me a long time to realize that it was just anxiety because here's the thing. This is what I was trying to do is I was trying to fix it. I was in fix it mode. So I was like, maybe I can take CBD. Maybe I can do supplements. Maybe I can try magnesium. Maybe I can do meditation, exercise. Maybe I can do tapping. Maybe I can, all those different things, cold showers. breathing exercises. I wanted to do all of those because I just wanted those feelings to go away. But yes, those are good for a healthy person, but it's not good if you're trying to eliminate anxiety because it doesn't, it might help in the short term, but it doesn't help in the long term. And you talked about that in the mentorship. And I've told people that 100 times when I was helping you in the mentorship after I recovered. But everybody has to go and figure that out on their own because you're not going to recover. If you get deep into an anxiety cycle, you're not going to recover in 2 weeks. It just doesn't work like that. You need to, it's time, patience, persistence, repetition, and staying on track and being, basically being a reliable resource for yourself, but you need to be accountable too.
I always do that. I'm always on mute because I don't
Yeah.
want to disturb. And then, no, I 100% agree. And I mean, and it was great to watch you, right? Because you hadn't gone through the mentorship, but then like, you were listening in and then the answers you were giving, I was like, oh my God, like you nailed it. And it's exactly what you said. It's not something that goes away overnight. And
No.
there's nothing wrong with those things. It's
No.
just that it's not like, it just won't get you out. It's like
Yeah.
lifestyle adjustments like that won't help you recover. They're just
Nope.
lifestyle adjustments.
Exactly.
So then, okay, so you went through all that. Then what happened? What was the shift for you where you were like, okay, this is like anxiety?
So I found your channel, right? Because when you type in anxiety, panic attacks, like you're gonna pop up your YouTube channel. And obviously there's like other coaches that you find too, right? And so I started doing a mix of all of them. But really, I think the shift for me, it was like yours was more like straight to the point, but it wasn't about like coping. It was more like, how do we get the hell out of this situation that you're in? How do you get out of this hole? So I started consuming your content and I was like, this guy makes so much sense. And it wasn't until, and then you recommended like a couple books, which it was like, when you're in the anxiety cycle, you're basically an information junkie. You're on Google, you're looking up, Wikipedia articles on everything that has to do with your nervous system, your amygdala, how cortisol works, adrenaline. And so I read the books by Claire Weeks and Paul David, and I was like, oh my God, this is like exactly what I'm feeling. And it wasn't until I stopped trying to fix it and, like we say, just letting it be there, that I realized like I don't have to do anything. Like by doing nothing, it makes it go away on its own. And it wasn't overnight. Like it took a long time. So what I had to start doing was like I had to start just doing the things that scared the crap out of me, that brought me the most anxiety. And it wasn't until I started doing those things over and over and over again that my brain kind of shifted and my body was like, all right, well, you don't have to be scared about driving anymore, because I couldn't even drive my car. Like I try to, like, I don't share this story with a lot of people because it's like, if you go out to like a social event, you're like, you don't want to listen to someone talk about their problems the whole time. It's like, so I stopped, like, my family obviously knew what was going on, but like outside of that, there was like a very short list of people that knew how bad, like I struggled, because you can't see somebody and be like, oh, you're struggling with anxiety. It's all inner, it's all inward. And it's like mostly like you're inward thinking like, oh, they can tell that I have anxiety. Yeah. And then I must look like I am anxiety, but it's like, it's all in your head. But I think the shift happened was when I just started going out and doing things. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get a different job. I'm going to go out and I'm going to challenge myself. Like when I say I couldn't drive, if I got to because at one time I was at a stoplight and I had a panic attack. So do you know what I did for the next like 3 months? I avoided stoplights. So I would only go places where I knew I didn't have to go. I could just be a direct from my house to where I needed to go back without ever going into a stoplight. That's freaking crazy. But I did that. So eventually the shift was I just got to start doing these things. And even if I do get panic, or even if I do get an adrenaline wave, like Mirka says, so what? What does it matter? It's not going to kill me. It never did before. It was not going to now. And eventually just started getting incrementally better and better and better.
Yeah.
And then I was like, holy shit, this was the way out. It was just by doing nothing, it made it all go away. And you say it to every single person in the mentorship. And at the very beginning, no one believes you because they have to figure it out for themselves. And I watched that happen with people. And then there's an aha moment for everybody where they're like, oh my God, this really does work.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't need to fix it because there's nothing to fix. But it's really very hard to get to that point.
Exactly. Exactly. And you see it, right? Like we like for us, then it's just repetition. It's just like bringing it up.
Yep.
Hey, don't do anything. Don't do anything. Don't do anything. And
Yep.
yeah, I mean, even when you were talking about like being in the party and stuff like that, and I mean, I remember it was the same. My family, my close family members were the only people that knew.
Yep.
Just maybe one or two friends. Nobody knew. I always used to
Yep.
say, like, if I get out of this, I don't want anyone to know I ever went through this.
Yep.
It was like one of those things.
Yep.
Um, and now it's wild, like I feel like for me personally, like sharing my story about it, I
Yep.
thought people would kind of look at me a little bit weird, but I
Yeah.
actually find that more people admire it even more. Like people
Yeah.
like, almost like respect you more for like sharing something, where you're
Yep.
like in such a dark place. And
It
you
was, and like,
yeah, yeah.
so I remember like I looked up your program and I followed you for a while and I was like, oh my God, this guy, I'm like, how can I help people?
Mhm.
Because I'm like, maybe I need to start helping people. Maybe that's a good way for me to continue my recovery is by helping people get to where I am now based on where I knew I was. So
Mhm.
that's when I reached out to you and I'm like, oh, maybe I can help be a coach. And then I started, and I couldn't have done that at the beginning. Like I couldn't even go for a walk outside without, thinking like these weird, crazy things and like having panic attacks. Like, well, even just being around like family was hard for me. It was like, and I used to be, I am, but I was a very sociable person, and I loved going out and doing things and being around people and hanging out, and then I couldn't do it, and I was like, what the hell's wrong? Like, you know what I mean? So, and then once I got to the point where I was like, maybe I'm going to start working again, and I started helping within the mentorship. I knew like, all right, I can start helping people, and like because after a little while of like, you go through the toss up of it's like, oh, no one wants to hear what I have to say. I don't have any valuable stuff. But then when you realize you really do, and just like you verifying that and like, supporting that, the other people in the mentorship that like were like, oh, this guy does have some valuable input to help people. And once I started to do that, it just made things click. And I was like, you know what, I can help people. And at first, I didn't want to share my story on the channel because I was like, what if somebody sees it and they're like, oh, this guy, went through, but who cares what people think, right?
Mhm.
And that's probably a lot of the reason I even fell into the anxiety cycle to begin with was obviously it was stress related, but it was more like I cared too much about what people thought. And I was always trying to like maybe impress or be somebody that I wasn't, right?
Yeah.
So I think going through this was like a good wake up call to just be more of your authentic self and not care what anyone thinks.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, too, I was like, I'm going to share my story because if I can help somebody that was in the same shoes that I was, it's worth it. And I think there's a lot of strength in being vulnerable, too. And I was
Mhm.
like, I don't care if like I'm not weak. To be able to come out of what I went through, there's no weakness in that. That takes only courage and strength,
Yeah.
because it's a really dark, dark place and a pit that you're in, and you don't ever think you're going to get out of it. And all of a sudden, like, and it takes a lot of time and persistence, but little by little, day by day, like millimeter by millimeter, you get better until one day you're like, holy shit, like, I didn't think about anxiety today.
Yeah.
I was able to go drive and have a good time and not even worry about it. And like you talk about it in the mentorship, it's like it's not like a shift that goes off one day, like, oh, I'm recovered. Is one day you think and you're like, oh my God, like it's been weeks I haven't even, and it's a crazy, crazy experience. And unless people do it firsthand, it's like it's hard to even explain or people to believe.
Exactly. No, I totally agree. I agree with everything you were saying, from being vulnerable to the fact that, if you can get through this, like this stuff is hard. I,
Yep.
I, I still use it as a stepping stone. If some major challenge comes up to me, like,
Yeah.
yeah, I was able to recover. I can do this.
Yep.
That's
Absolutely.
yeah. And you crushed it as a coach. And I know there's people in the mentorship right now, and people that have graduated that owe their recovery to you. They're like, Greg really helped me out. When Greg said this, that really stuck with me. When Greg gave me this feedback, and so I mean, it's incredible. I mean, I talked to you and I was like, oh, he gets it. And I remember I was like, yo, you got this. You can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, man. What would you like tell people right now that are like in the thick of it? Like, when you were really struggling, when you weren't even able to drive and stuff like that, for those people that are watching, this video of you right now, what would you tell them?
And I know we say this all the time. It's like obviously you get checked out by your doctor first, right? there's some situations where like sometimes there is something that needs to be looked at, but and I would say in the cases where we're helping people, where you're helping people, 99.9% of the time it is anxiety, right? And you got to trust your doctors, right? And if you get checked out and everything's cool, like believe your doctors. And then at that point, it's like you got to stop trying to fix it, because the quick band-aid of trying to fix it, the sooner you realize that there is nothing to fix and there's nothing that's going to make it fastly go away, like really quickly, like is when really recovery can start. And it's really hard at the beginning, but once you realize that it's all within yourself to kind of just push through, and it's like a battle of perseverance. Like it's gonna be really hard. And it's funny, like when people talk about like setbacks and things like that, those are gonna happen. You're gonna feel good, and then you're gonna feel back to square one, but you're never really back to square one. It's like trust what the coaches say. Like you might not think it when you're in it, but it really everyone that our coaches kind of went through what you're going through, and it's you got to just have the courage to do it one day at a time. Don't think ahead 3 weeks and don't think back 3 weeks, because you're farther along than you were 3 weeks ago, and you're going to be further along in 3 weeks. But you just got to stay, in that present moment. And that's a lot of like what people can't do is just be presently okay with how they are at that time, because it's really never as bad as they think it is. It's never going to get any worse, and it's only going to get better.
Yeah. Wow. That is well said. Wow. Yeah, you're 100% right. You're 100% right. And it's great to see people like you. It's great just to see people come out of it and going back to living. And bro, I'm like so proud of you, and like just all the stuff you've been doing, and you helping out other people, and just everything going on with your life and your family, and like all this
Yeah.
great stuff. I really hope one day you and I hopefully get to meet up in real life one day. And
No, we will. It's
yeah,
not if, it's when, right?
it's when. It's when.
It's when. Yeah.
You got it. You got
Yeah.
it. I appreciate it, Greg. I mean, is there any other things that you would like to like share with, people watching, this channel? Any other pieces of advice?
Yeah. Yeah. Just like, it might suck. You might have crappy feelings right now. You might be having, some serious like depersonalization, derealization. Your panic attacks might feel like they're debilitating, but you just got to live your life, right? Nobody knows what you're going through. Nobody can see it. It might be tough in the moment, but you just got to stick with it. Do the things that you normally would do. Go out with your family. And sometimes it's going to be hard. Sometimes it's going to be a lot easier. It's just having the courage to know that it's okay to ask for help, right? As a guy, it's hard for men to reach out and say something's wrong, because we're always the ones that have to be strong for everybody else, right? But there's no shame in asking for help, right?
Yeah.
And if you do, then you're probably stronger than most people, because like I said before, it takes a lot of courage to ask for help. And, for me personally, it's like the vulnerable side of sharing my story. If it helps out 3 people, helps out one person, helps out 10, it was worth it. Because I know that when I was suffering, all I wanted to see was someone else that recovered. And I wanted to see someone else that went through the same thing that I did and relate. And I think like, I want to be relatable to somebody so that they can have, have the faith that one day they're going to be, symptom free, and their recovery journey is going to be over. Because I think it's really important to have that for somebody. And I hope I can be that one person for someone.
Definitely, man. Definitely. Greg, like I say, I'm so glad you came on the channel. Thanks again. Hopefully we'll do this again in the future.
Yeah. Any way I can help. I just wish I could have helped more when I was in the mentorship as a coach.
It was
I
totally
still check on, I jump on the calls every once in a while in silent mode, or I'm always on the page, kind of looking at people's problems, and I try to chime in when I can. So
you're always part of the community, man. You're always part of the team. And yeah, no, like I said, I'm really happy. And yeah, for sure, man. Well, thank you everybody for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.